My name is Geraldine Ampah and I teach sociology at the University of Ghana. So we have to look at the government response in relation to what was happening in Ghana at the time. So a coup had happened in 81 and there was farming, bushfires, and then also there was dire the economy was just in shambles at the time. And so there was also a coup attempt in 82. So the Ghana Togo border was shut. So when the notice of expulsion happened, the borders were not opened. That also meant that the Togo Benin border was also shut. So a lot of people gathered at the border. And so in answering that question, I think we have to, rather than what the government response was, we have to look at what families and communities did. So when the borders were finally opened and the migrants were allowed to return, the families were very important in reintegrating them. So the government response showed lapses in their approach, but it also was a testament to the important role families and communities played in accepting these people and reintegrating them. We know what the bag is, right? It's just a big bag that can take a lot of things, and it's not just common in Ghana and then in Nigeria. It's quite ubiquitous on the African continent. In South Africa, it's known as the China bag, and in Botswana, it's known as Zimbabwean, and in Zimbabwe, it's known as Motswana, and I've been told in Congo, it is known as the Abuja bag. But for me, what it symbolizes is that it symbolizes the history and politics of migration on the African continent. It symbolizes othering migrants and making them scapegoats, right, in situations where um, those in power fail to take charge of the economy. ECOWAS was formed in 1975, and a couple of years after, the ECOWAS Protocol on Free Movement, right, was instituted in 1979. So by the time the expulsion was happened, West Africans can move within the sub-region visa free. But what the expulsion did was that it led to the reintroduction of supplementary protocols that basically fortify the rights of migrants, right? So that migrants are treated with dignity and respect. And the most important of the supplementary protocols that was implemented was that no West African country can expel migrants en masse, right? So that even if expulsion is necessary or deportation is necessary, it has to be done humanely with a human face. And since then, there hasn't been expulsion on that scale in West Africa. And so, knock on wood, it should never happen again. So, one of the things the expulsion caused was the entrenchment of the rights of migrants. One of the immediate consequences was that it led to trauma, right? So if you are living your life and then all of a sudden you have to leave, right? So the abrupt uprootedness of the whole thing led to a lot of trauma for those who were involved. It also meant that people lost properties, people lost their lives, right? So these we have to think about this when we think about the consequences of the expulsion. So in terms of the long-term consequences, the trauma still lives with these people. And as part of our interviews, people whenever Nigeria comes up, right, it comes up with negative feelings. So the trauma is still there. But then also, it has led to some sort of tension between Ghana and Nigeria. And these shows up, it flares up every now and then. So Ghanaians, for example, particularly traders, will be blaming Nigerians um, for taking up space in their market and making it difficult for them to sell their wares, vice versa in Nigeria as well. So there is underlying tensions, right, because of the expulsion of Ghanaians from Nigeria. So in terms of the lessons that we've learned, migrants are human beings. How about that? Right. And when we think about migration, it is looked at as the exception. It's not normalized. But migration is very much a part of our history as human beings. Okay. So one of the lessons is that we have to humanize migrants, humanize migration, so that we see migrants as our neighbors, as people who just want a better life for themselves and their families. And more often than not, migrants are law-abiding people in society. That out of 90%, only a few people would misbehave. But that's the focus is on those who misbehave. The majority of migrants who do the right thing, they don't get a lot of attention. So in terms of lessons, we have to begin to think about migrants as people who are law-abiding citizens, right, and do the best for themselves and their families. So popular culture has done quite a lot to keep the memory of Ghana Must Go alive. So there's been novels written with Ghana Must Go as titles. There's also been music that's been produced with Ghana Must Go titles. But a lot more can be done, right, in popular culture, particularly in documenting the expulsion and documenting the lived experiences of the people who went through it. And I've said this already. When you look at what's been written about migration, migration or migrants are seen as the exception and not the norm. But migration is very much a part of our process, and stories about the expulsion of migrants, right, have to be told so that we never forget. And I'm happy Antique Lemonade is collaborating with us to celebrate the 40 years anniversary of the expulsion of Ghanaians from Nigeria, so we never forget.
So, in addition to honoring the memory of those who did not survive and the strength and resilience of those who did survive, one other thing that is important to remember as we watch this exhibition is that scapegoating migrants is not a good thing. Universally, really, around the world, migrants get blamed for all the troubles of the world. So Donald Trump, if he had his own way when he was president of the United States, he would have built a wall to separate the Americans from the Mexicans. Okay, so this is something that across the world we find that when economic difficulties are being felt in a country, the easiest person to blame it on is the migrant. Now, while we may be in Ghana as citizens, we should remember that there's at any point in time we could be migrants too. You might get a job offer somewhere else and then have to move. And even if you are not moving, you have a family member who's already moved or a family member who might move. So when the state puts in place laws and mechanisms that alienate migrants, it's important for all of us to remember that how we would like to be treated is the way in which we should treat others. Right? We talk about the golden rule all the time. When I've talked to young children about this, I've had them sing the song about Jesus loving all the little children of the world. Because really, what we need to remember as adults is you do unto others what you'd like others to do unto you. So come see the exhibit and walk away remembering that how I would not like to be treated is the way I should ensure that I don't treat others also.